The room fell silent as Alexander Stone signed the contract with a gold pen, his signature sealing the most twisted bet of his life. Around the mahogany table sat his three closest friends from college, all billionaires like him, all bored with their perfect lives. The bet was simple and cruel. Marry the most unlikely woman possible within 6 months, stay married for 1 year, then divorce and split the $50 million prize. "Remember the rules," said his friend James, sliding the contract into his briefcase. "She has to be everything you would never choose. Poor, unattractive by society's standards, and completely opposite to your usual type. No backing out, Alex. 50 million is 50 million. Alexander nodded, his jaw tight. At 32 he had everything money could buy but felt empty inside. His last 3 relationships had ended badly, each woman only interested in his wallet. This bet felt like the final nail in the coffin of his faith in love. If he was going to be used, he might as well profit from it. "Fine," he said, standing up from his leather chair. "But I choose the woman. No interference from any of you." The next morning, Alexander drove through the city in his black Bentley, looking for his target. He had spent hours thinking about this. The woman had to be perfect for the bet, someone so different from his world that his friends would be shocked. Someone his mother would hate. Someone the media would mock. He found her at a small diner called Betty's Kitchen in the worst part of town. Through the window, he watched her serve coffee and burgers to truck drivers and construction workers. She was a large black woman, probably in her late 20s, with a bright smile that lit up her whole face. Her name tag read Diana. Perfect. Alexander walked inside, his expensive suit making him stick out like a sore thumb. Diana approached his table with a pot of coffee, her smile never fading even though he clearly didn't belong there. "Good morning, honey. What can I get you today?" Her voice was warm and friendly with a slight southern accent. "Just coffee, please." He studied her face as she poured. She had beautiful brown eyes and soft features. When she smiled, dimples appeared in her cheeks. She was definitely overweight, probably around 200 pounds, but she carried herself with confidence. "You new around here?" she asked, setting down the coffee cup. "Don't think I've seen you before." "Just passing through," he lied. "I'm Alexander." "Nice to meet you, Alexander." "I'm Diana. Let me know if you need anything else." For the next week, Alexander returned to Betty's Kitchen every day. He told Diana he was in town on business, staying at a nearby hotel. She always served him with the same warm smile, never asking about his expensive clothes or watch. She treated him like any other customer. During their brief conversations, he learned that Diana worked 2 jobs to support her sick mother. She had dreams of opening her own bakery someday but could barely afford rent. She was kind to everyone, even the rudest customers. She had never been married and lived alone with her mother in a small apartment. On Friday, Alexander made his move. "Diana, would you like to have dinner with me tonight? Somewhere nice." She looked surprised, then worried. "I don't know if that's a good idea. We're from different worlds, aren't we?" "Maybe that's what makes it interesting," he said, using his most charming smile. "Just dinner. Nothing more." Diana agreed, and Alexander took her to the most expensive restaurant in the city. She looked uncomfortable in her simple black dress while surrounded by crystal and gold, but she tried to fit in. During dinner, she asked him direct questions about his life. "So what do you really do for work? And don't say business. That's what every rich man says when he doesn't want to tell the truth." Alexander was caught off guard by her honesty. "I own several companies. Real estate, technology, some restaurants." "So you're really rich then?" "Yes." "And you're eating at Betty's Kitchen every day because?" He couldn't tell her the truth. "Because the coffee is good and the company is better." Diana laughed. "You're full of it, but I like you anyway." Over the next month, Alexander courted Diana like no woman before. He sent flowers to the diner, took her to movies and concerts, and slowly learned about her life. She had grown up poor, raised by a single mother who cleaned houses for rich families. Diana had worked since she was 16, never complaining, always hopeful for a better future. What surprised Alexander was how much he enjoyed her company. Diana was funny and smart, with opinions about everything. She didn't try to impress him or change herself for him. She called him out when he was being pretentious and made him laugh when he took himself too seriously. "You know what your problem is?" she said one evening as they walked through the park. "You think money makes you better than everyone else. But it just makes you lonelier." "That's not true," he argued. "Isn't it? When's the last time you had a real friend? Someone who liked you for you, not your bank account." Alexander couldn't answer because she was right. He had acquaintances, business partners, and people who wanted things from him. But real friends? He couldn't remember the last time. After 2 months of dating, Alexander proposed. He did it at Betty's kitchen, getting down on one knee right in front of all the regular customers. Diana cried and said yes, and the whole diner cheered. The ring was beautiful but not too expensive. He didn't want to scare her. They were married 3 weeks later in a small ceremony at the courthouse. Diana wore a simple white dress she bought at a department store. Alexander's family didn't attend. His mother had hung up the phone when he told her about Diana. His friends thought he had lost his mind. The wedding made local news because of who Alexander was. The headlines were cruel: "Billionaire marries diner waitress," and "Love or money?" Diana tried to ignore the attention, but Alexander could see it hurt her. "They think I'm using you," she said one night, reading comments on news websites. "They think I trapped you somehow." "Let them think what they want," Alexander said, but inside he felt guilty. They were partly right, just not in the way they thought. The first month of marriage was harder than Alexander expected. Diana moved into his mansion but felt lost in the huge space. She missed her small apartment and worried about her mother, who was now in a nursing home that Alexander was paying for. Diana insisted on continuing to work at Betty's kitchen despite Alexander's protests. "This is who I am," she said firmly. "I'm not going to become some trophy wife who sits around doing nothing all day." Alexander found himself falling into a routine he had never experienced. He would drop Diana off at work in the morning, go to his office, and pick her up in the evening. They would eat dinner together and watch TV or talk. It was simple and peaceful in a way his life had never been. But the bet haunted him. Every night as he lay next to Diana, he remembered the contract in his safe. $50 million to break her heart in 11 more months. The thought made him sick, but he had already come too far to back out now. What Alexander didn't know was that Diana had her own secrets. She had overheard parts of phone conversations, seen the way his friends looked at her, and noticed how he sometimes seemed distant and guilty. She was starting to suspect that their marriage wasn't as random as he claimed. But Diana was also falling in love, despite her fears. Alexander was kind to her mother, patient with her insecurities, and seemed genuinely interested in her thoughts and dreams. When he kissed her goodnight, she felt safe and loved in a way she had never experienced. The bet that had started as a cruel game was becoming something neither of them had expected. Real feelings were growing on both sides, making the eventual truth even more dangerous. Alexander was learning that Diana was nothing like the woman he had expected to marry for money. She was strong, intelligent, and completely genuine. As the first month ended, Alexander realized he was in trouble. This wasn't supposed to be real, but it was starting to feel like the most real thing in his life. The question was, would he have the courage to tell Diana the truth before it was too late? 3 months into their marriage, Alexander's world began to shift in ways he never expected. Diana had transformed his cold mansion into a warm home, filling it with plants, family photos, and the smell of her cooking. She had also transformed him, though he was only beginning to realize it. "You smile more now," his assistant Sarah mentioned one Tuesday morning as she brought him his coffee. "It's nice to see." Alexander looked up from his computer, surprised. "Do I?" "Yes, sir. Ever since you got married. Mrs. Stone is good for you." Mrs. Stone. The name still felt strange. Alexander had never imagined himself as a married man, and certainly not to someone like Diana. But as the weeks passed, he found himself looking forward to going home, to hearing about her day at the diner, to sharing meals and watching terrible reality TV shows that she loved. Diana was unlike any woman he had ever known. She didn't want expensive gifts or fancy vacations. When he bought her a diamond necklace, she made him return it and asked him to donate the money to the children's hospital instead. When he suggested they take a trip to Paris, she said she would rather visit her cousin in Alabama. "You don't understand," she explained one evening as they sat on the porch swing he had installed for her. "I don't need things to make me happy. I just need people I care about to be healthy and safe." Alexander was beginning to understand, and it scared him. Diana's values were so different from his own that they made him question everything he had believed about success and happiness. The media attention around their marriage had not died down. If anything, it had gotten worse. Photographers followed them everywhere, and gossip magazines ran stories about their unlikely romance every week. The headlines were getting meaner: "Beauty and the Beast," and "What's he really after?" Diana handled it better than Alexander did. She would laugh at the ridiculous stories and shrug off the mean comments. "They don't know us," she would say. "Their opinions don't matter." But Alexander knew some of the stories were affecting her. He caught her looking at herself in mirrors differently, tugging at her clothes and frowning. One morning he found diet pills hidden in her bathroom drawer. "Diana, what are these?" he asked, holding up the bottle. She blushed and tried to take them from him. "Nothing. I thought maybe I should try to lose some weight. For you." Alexander felt like he had been punched in the stomach. "For me? Why would you think that?" "Because everyone says, they say you must be embarrassed by me. That I'm not pretty enough or thin enough to be your wife." Alexander pulled her into his arms, feeling angry at the world and guilty about his own part in this mess. "Listen to me. You are beautiful exactly as you are. Anyone who says otherwise is an idiot, including me if I ever made you feel that way. But the pictures in the magazines are taken by people who make money from making others feel bad about themselves. You are perfect, Diana. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." That night, Alexander threw away the diet pills and made a decision. He called his lawyer and asked him to prepare a statement threatening legal action against any publication that printed false or hurtful stories about his wife. The gossip slowed down after that, but the damage to Diana's confidence had been done. Alexander's relationship with his family remained tense. His mother, Patricia Stone, had not spoken to him since the wedding. His sister Emma had tried to be supportive but clearly didn't understand his choice. The few times they met for lunch, Emma would ask pointed questions about his marriage. "Are you happy, Alex? Really happy?" she asked during one of their lunches at an upscale restaurant downtown. "Yes," he said and realized he meant it. "I know it seems strange, but Diana makes me happy in a way I've never been before. She's very different from Cassandra," Emma said, referring to his last girlfriend, a model who had dumped him when she found someone richer. "That's the point," Alexander replied. "Cassandra never cared about me. She cared about my money and what I could do for her career. Diana doesn't want anything from me except my time and attention." Emma looked skeptical but didn't push further. Alexander could tell she thought he was going through some kind of midlife crisis, even though he was only 32. The worst part was his friends. James, Robert, and Michael called him regularly asking for updates on the bet. They thought the whole thing was hilarious and kept making jokes about when he would come to his senses and end the marriage. "You're really committed to this act," James said during one of their monthly poker games. "I almost believe you actually like her." Alexander forced a laugh, but inside he felt sick. The truth was, he more than liked Diana. He was falling in love with her, and the knowledge terrified him. How could he tell her about the bet now? How could he explain that their entire relationship had started as a cruel joke? Diana, meanwhile, was dealing with her own challenges. Working at Betty's kitchen while being married to a billionaire created awkward situations every day. Her co-workers treated her differently now, some with envy and others with suspicion. Regular customers made comments about her lucky break, and asked intrusive questions about her marriage. "How does it feel to hit the jackpot?" one customer asked her while she refilled his coffee. "Excuse me?" Diana replied, trying to stay polite. "Marrying a rich man like that must feel like winning the lottery." Diana's smile tightened. "My husband and I married because we love each other, just like most people do." But the comments bothered her more than she let on. At home, she found herself watching Alexander carefully, looking for signs that he was growing tired of her or regretting their marriage. Sometimes she caught him staring at nothing with a worried expression, and when she asked what was wrong, he would just say he was thinking about work. The truth was, Alexander was thinking about the bet constantly. He had 8 more months to go, and every day made it harder to imagine going through with the divorce. Diana had become the best part of his life. She made him laugh, challenged his thinking, and loved him in a way that felt completely genuine. One evening, as they were getting ready for bed, Diana asked him a question that stopped his heart. "Alex, can I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "Did you marry me because you felt sorry for me?" Alexander nearly dropped his toothbrush. "What? No. Why would you ask that?" Diana sat on the edge of the bed, looking small despite her size. "Sometimes I wonder why you chose me. Out of all the women you could have had, why me? I'm not rich, I'm not model beautiful. I don't have anything special to offer someone like you." Alexander knelt in front of her, taking her hands. "Diana, you have everything special to offer. You're kind, you're funny, you're smart, you're honest. You make me want to be a better person." "But why me?" she pressed. "What made you notice me in the first place?" Alexander's mind raced. He couldn't tell her the truth, but he couldn't lie either. "Not completely. Because you were real," he said finally. "In a world full of fake people trying to impress me or use me, you were just yourself. That's rarer than you know." Diana seemed satisfied with this answer, but Alexander could tell she still had doubts. The questions were getting harder to answer, and he was running out of ways to avoid the truth. That night, as Diana slept beside him, Alexander stared at the ceiling and tried to figure out what to do. He could break the bet, tell his friends he had changed his mind, and forfeit the money. But that would mean explaining to Diana why he had married her in the first place, and he couldn't bear the thought of hurting her like that. Or he could continue with the original plan, stay married for the full year, then find some way to end the marriage that wouldn't devastate Diana. Maybe he could make her think it was her idea. Maybe he could gradually become a worse husband until she wanted to leave him. But even thinking about it made him feel sick. How had he gotten himself into this mess? What had started as a simple, cruel bet had become the most complicated situation of his life. As Diana shifted in her sleep, moving closer to him, Alexander made a decision. He would find a way out of this that didn't hurt her. He would protect her from the truth no matter what it cost him. Diana deserved better than to know she had been a bet, a joke among rich men with too much money and too little heart. But first he had to figure out how to do it. And time was running out. 5 months into their marriage, Alexander's carefully constructed world began to crack. The pressure of living a double life was taking its toll, and Diana was starting to notice the changes in him. "You've been having nightmares," she said one morning over breakfast, her voice gentle but concerned. "You talk in your sleep sometimes." Alexander nearly choked on his coffee. "What do I say?" "Nothing clear. Just, you sound upset. Like you're arguing with someone." Diana reached across the table and touched his hand. "Is everything okay at work? You seem stressed lately." Alexander forced a smile. "Just some difficult deals I'm working on. Nothing for you to worry about." But Diana was worried. Over the past few weeks, Alexander had become distant and moody. He would disappear into his office for hours, making phone calls in hushed voices. When she asked about his day, his answers were vague and distracted. Sometimes she caught him looking at her with an expression she couldn't read, like he was sad about something. The truth was, Alexander was falling apart. The monthly meetings with his friends had become torture sessions where he had to pretend everything was going according to plan. Meanwhile, his feelings for Diana grew stronger every day. "You look tired, Alex," his friend Robert observed during their latest poker game. "Marriage wearing you down already?" "He's probably exhausted from pretending to be attracted to her," Michael added with a laugh that made Alexander's blood boil. "Shut up," Alexander snapped, his control finally breaking. "Don't talk about my wife like that." The table went quiet. James raised an eyebrow. "Relax, buddy. We're just joking around. It's not like this is real." But it was real. That was the problem. Alexander's marriage to Diana had become the most real thing in his life, and he was about to destroy it for $50 million and the approval of men he was starting to realize weren't really his friends. Diana's mother, Mrs. Johnson, had been living in the expensive nursing home Alexander paid for since their wedding. Diana visited her every Sunday, and recently she had started bringing Alexander along. Mrs. Johnson was a sharp woman who reminded Alexander a lot of her daughter. "You treat my Diana right," she told Alexander during one of their visits. "She's got a big heart, but that means she can be hurt easier than most." "I would never hurt her," Alexander said, meaning it completely. "Good. Because if you did, you'd have to answer to me." Mrs. Johnson's eyes twinkled, but Alexander could tell she was serious. These visits were both the best and worst part of Alexander's week. He loved seeing Diana with her mother, loved being included in their family traditions and inside jokes. But he also felt like a fraud, knowing that their happiness was built on lies. Diana had been working on her dream of opening a bakery. Alexander had secretly looked into commercial properties for her, thinking it could be a way to make amends for what he was planning to do. But when he casually mentioned he had seen some available bakery spaces, Diana's reaction surprised him. "I can't let you buy me a bakery, Alex," she said firmly. "That's too much. I need to do this myself or it won't mean anything. But I want to help you achieve your dreams." "You already do just by believing in me. That's worth more than money." Alexander was amazed by her independence and integrity. Any other woman in his life would have jumped at the chance for him to buy her a business. Diana insisted on saving her own money and earning her success. The media attention had died down somewhat, but it hadn't disappeared entirely. One particularly cruel article in a gossip magazine suggested that Alexander was paying Diana to pretend to be his wife, and that the whole marriage was a publicity stunt to improve his image. When Diana read it, she laughed it off, but Alexander could see it bothered her. "Why would anyone think that?" she asked him that night as they watched TV. "Because people can't believe that someone could love you for who you are," Alexander said, and immediately regretted how that sounded. Diana looked hurt. Is that what you think? That I'm unlovable? No. That's not what I meant at all. I meant that people are jealous and small-minded. They can't understand that I'm the lucky one in this marriage. Alexander pulled her close, hating himself for the confusion he was causing. Every conversation felt like walking through a minefield, trying not to reveal the truth while also not hurting her feelings. One evening, Diana came home from work with exciting news. Betty offered me a promotion. She wants me to become the assistant manager. It's more money and I get to help train new employees. Alexander should have been happy for her, but instead he felt panic. The promotion would mean Diana was more established in her job, more settled in their life together. It would make their eventual divorce even more devastating for her. That's great, he managed to say. You deserve it. I was thinking maybe I could cut back to just this job and quit my weekend cleaning work. That would give us more time together. Diana's eyes were bright with excitement. We could take that trip you mentioned. Maybe not Paris, but somewhere nice. Alexander's heart broke a little more. Diana was planning their future together while he was planning their end. Let's talk about it later, he said. I'm tired tonight. Diana's face fell slightly, but she nodded. Of course. I'm sorry, I'm probably getting ahead of myself. That night, Alexander lay awake wondering how he had become such a terrible person. Diana deserved so much better than what he was giving her. She deserved a husband who loved her completely and honestly, not someone who was counting down the days until he could walk away with $50 million. The next morning, Alexander made a decision that surprised even him. He called James and asked to meet for lunch. I want to change the terms of the bet, Alexander said without preamble when they sat down at their usual restaurant. James looked amused. Change them how? I want out. Keep the money. I don't care about it anymore. Are you serious? James leaned back in his chair. You're going to forfeit $50 million for that woman? Her name is Diana. And yes, I am. James studied his face carefully. You're actually in love with her, aren't you? This wasn't part of the plan, Alex. Plans change. But the contract doesn't. You signed it, remember? You stay married for 1 year, then you divorce. If you back out early or stay married longer, you forfeit the money and you owe each of us $10 million. That was the penalty clause you insisted on. Alexander had forgotten about the penalty clause. $60 million, $10 million to each of his 3 friends, plus the $50 million prize. He didn't have that kind of liquid cash without selling major assets, which would take months and raise questions he couldn't answer. There has to be another way, Alexander said. There is. Stick to the original plan. Divorce her after 1 year, take your share of the money and move on with your life. It's not like she'll be destitute. I'm sure you'll give her a nice settlement. But Alexander knew it wasn't about money for Diana. It was about love and trust and all the things she thought they had built together. A settlement wouldn't heal the betrayal she would feel when she learned the truth. That evening, Alexander came home to find Diana in the kitchen, humming while she cooked dinner. She had changed out of her work uniform into a flowery dress that made her look soft and pretty. When she saw him, her face lit up with genuine joy. Perfect timing. I'm making your favorite pot roast with those little potatoes you like. Alexander watched her move around the kitchen, completely at ease in their home, planning their meal and probably their evening together. She looked so happy, so secure in their marriage. The knowledge of what he was going to do to her felt like a weight on his chest. Diana, he said suddenly. Yes, honey? Alexander opened his mouth to tell her everything, the bet, the lies, all of it. But when he saw her trusting brown eyes looking at him with such love, the words died in his throat. Nothing. Just, I love you. Diana smiled and kissed his cheek. I love you too. Now go wash up. Dinner will be ready in 10 minutes. As Alexander climbed the stairs to their bedroom, he realized he was in an impossible situation. He was trapped between the terms of a cruel bet and his growing love for a woman who deserved so much better than what he was giving her. 7 months to go. 7 months to figure out how to save Diana from the truth or find the courage to tell her everything and face the consequences. Either way, Alexander knew that the man who had signed that contract 6 months ago no longer existed. Diana had changed him completely and there was no going back. 6 months into their marriage, Alexander's world came crashing down in the most unexpected way. It started with a phone call on a Tuesday morning while Diana was at work. Mr. Stone? This is Detective Rodriguez with the city police. We need to speak with you about some threatening letters your wife has been receiving. Alexander's blood ran cold. What threatening letters? Diana hasn't mentioned anything to me. She filed a report yesterday. Someone has been sending her mail at the diner where she works. The letters contain some pretty disturbing content. We think you should see them." An hour later, Alexander sat in the police station reading letters that made him feel sick. Someone had been sending Diana hate mail for weeks, calling her terrible names and threatening to teach her a lesson for marrying above her station. The letters were full of racial slurs and cruel comments about her weight. "Why didn't she tell me about these?" Alexander asked Detective Rodriguez. "She said she didn't want to worry you. Apparently, she's been hoping they would just stop on their own." Alexander felt like the worst husband in the world. While he had been worried about his own guilty conscience, Diana had been dealing with threats and hate mail alone. She had been protecting him from worry while he was planning to break her heart. "Do you have any idea who might be sending these?" the detective asked. Alexander thought about all the cruel articles, the gossip, the way some people looked at Diana when they were out together. Could be anyone. "Our marriage has gotten a lot of negative attention. We're treating this seriously, Mr. Stone. The latest letter mentions specific locations where your wife goes regularly. We think someone might be watching her." Alexander felt a chill run down his spine. "What can we do?" "We're increasing patrols around the diner and your neighborhood. I'd also suggest that your wife vary her routine and maybe consider taking some time off work until we catch whoever is doing this." When Alexander got home that evening, Diana was sitting on the couch looking smaller than he had ever seen her. Her eyes were red from crying, and she looked up at him with embarrassment. "The police called you, didn't they?" she said quietly. Alexander sat down next to her and pulled her into his arms. "Why didn't you tell me about the letters, Diana? Why did you handle this alone?" "Because I didn't want you to think this was your fault. People are angry that you married me and they're taking it out on me. I thought if I ignored it, it would go away. This is not your fault, and it's not something you should have to handle alone. I'm your husband. I'm supposed to protect you." Diana started crying again. "Some of the things they wrote, they're so mean, Alex. They said I trapped you, that I'm disgusting, that I don't deserve to be happy." Alexander held her tighter, feeling rage toward whoever was doing this and disgust with himself. Here was Diana, dealing with real threats and cruelty, while he was worried about a bet he should never have made. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "You are taking time off from work until the police catch whoever is doing this. I don't want you going anywhere alone. I can't just stop working. Betty needs me and I need the money for my bakery fund. Diana, we have more money than we could spend in 10 lifetimes. You don't need to work at the diner for financial reasons. But I need to work for me. It's who I am." Alexander understood, but he was too scared for her safety to care about her independence right now. "Please. Just until this is over. Work on your bakery plans from home. Research recipes, design the layout, whatever you want. But please don't go to the diner until they catch this person." Diana agreed reluctantly, and for the next week, Alexander barely left her side. He worked from home, had groceries delivered, and accompanied her everywhere she needed to go. During this time he got to see a different side of his wife. Without the stress of working 2 jobs, Diana relaxed in a way Alexander had never seen before. She spent hours planning her dream bakery, sketching layouts and testing recipes in their kitchen. She was creative and ambitious, full of ideas and energy when she wasn't exhausted from work. "I want to specialize in Southern comfort desserts," she told him one afternoon as she pulled a perfect peach cobbler from the oven. "Things that remind people of home and family. Recipes passed down through generations." Alexander tasted the cobbler and nearly groaned with pleasure. "Diana, this is incredible. You could charge $50 for a slice of this." "That's not the point. I want people to feel loved when they eat my food. I want to create something that brings families together." Alexander watched her talk about her dreams and realized how little he had really known about her ambitions. Diana wasn't just a waitress saving money for a bakery. She was an artist with a vision, someone who wanted to use food to create happiness and connection. During that week at home they talked more than they had in months. Diana told him about her childhood, about helping her grandmother bake pies for church fundraisers, about dreams she had never shared with anyone. Alexander found himself opening up too, telling her about his lonely childhood, his difficult relationship with his mother, his struggles with feeling like his money was the only thing people valued about him. "That's not true," Diana said one evening as they sat on their porch swing. "You're kind, you're funny when you let yourself be, and you're more generous than you know. Not with money but with your time and attention. You listen to people. That's rare." Alexander felt tears in his eyes. "How do you always know exactly what to say?" "Because I pay attention. Because I care about you." It was during this week that Alexander realized he couldn't go through with the bet. Not because of the money, not because of the contract, but because Diana had become the most important person in his life. He would rather lose everything than hurt her. But before he could figure out how to handle the situation with his friends, the police called with an update. They had caught the person sending the threatening letters. It was your mother, Detective Rodriguez told Alexander over the phone. Alexander felt like the world had stopped spinning. What did you say? Patricia Stone. Your mother. She's been having the letters sent through a service, but we traced them back to her. She's agreed to stop and seek counseling in exchange for us not pressing charges. Alexander hung up the phone and stared at nothing for several minutes. His own mother had been terrorizing his wife. The woman who had raised him had been sending racist, cruel letters to Diana because she disapproved of their marriage. Who was that? Diana asked, coming into the room. Alexander looked at her sweet, trusting face and made a decision. He couldn't tell her it was his mother. She would blame herself, would think she had caused problems in his family. And the truth was, this was his fault for not standing up to his mother from the beginning. They caught the person sending the letters, he said. It was just some crazy person who read about us in the papers. They're going to stop now. Diana's relief was visible. Really? It's over? It's over. You can go back to work whenever you want. That night, Alexander called his mother. Patricia Stone answered on the third ring, her voice cold and distant as always. I wondered when you would call, she said. How could you do that to her? How could you send those terrible letters? I was trying to make her leave before she destroys your life completely. That woman is beneath you, Alexander. She's using you and you're too blind to see it. Diana has never asked me for anything. She works 2 jobs, she pays her own way, she even insisted on keeping her old bank account. If anyone is being used in this marriage, it's her. Don't be naive. Women like that are always after something. Alexander felt something break inside him. Women like what, mother? Black women? Poor women? Kind women? Which part of Diana do you find so threatening? I raised you better than this. No, you didn't. You raised me to think money was the only thing that mattered. You raised me to look down on people who had less than us. Diana is teaching me to be the man you should have raised me to be. Alexander hung up on his mother and decided he was done with people who couldn't see Diana's worth. That included his mother, his so-called friends, and anyone else who thought his wife was anything less than amazing. But he still had the problem of the bet. 7 more months on the contract and then what? He couldn't divorce Diana now. He loved her too much. But he also couldn't tell her about the bet without destroying her trust in him completely. That night, as Diana slept peacefully beside him for the first time in weeks, Alexander made a decision. He would find a way to break the contract without Diana ever knowing it existed. Whatever it cost him, whatever consequences he faced, he would protect her from the truth. Diana had saved him from his old life without even knowing it. Now it was his turn to save their marriage from his past mistakes. 7 months into their marriage, Alexander made the most difficult decision of his life. He called an emergency meeting with James, Robert, and Michael at his office on a Saturday when Diana was visiting her mother. I'm not going through with the divorce, he announced as soon as they sat down. I'm staying married to Diana. The 3 men exchanged glances. James spoke first. Alex, we've been through this. The contract is binding. You can't just change your mind. I can forfeit. I'll pay each of you the $10 million penalty and walk away from the $50 million prize. Robert laughed. You're talking about $60 million, Alex? For a woman you met in a diner. For the woman I love, Alexander corrected. And yes, she's worth every penny. Michael leaned forward. Think about this rationally. You could divorce her, take your share of the money, and then remarry her if you want. She never has to know about the bet. But I would know. And I won't live with that lie anymore. James pulled out his phone. Let me call my lawyer. Maybe we can work something out. There's nothing to work out. I'm done with this bet, done with this friendship, and done with pretending that any of this was okay. Alexander stood up to leave, but James's voice stopped him. If you walk away from this, Alex, you're walking away from us too. We've been friends for 15 years. No, we haven't. Friends don't make bets about destroying innocent people's lives. I should have realized that a long time ago. As Alexander drove home, he felt lighter than he had in months. The decision to forfeit the bet would cost him financially, but it felt like the first honest thing he had done since meeting Diana. Now he just had to figure out how to liquidate $60 million without Diana asking too many questions. When he got home, Diana was in the kitchen making dinner. She looked up when he walked in, and her smile made his heart skip a beat. How was your meeting? She asked, stirring something that smelled amazing. Productive. I ended some business relationships that weren't working out anymore. That's good. Sometimes you have to cut ties with people who don't have your best interests at heart. Alexander hugged her from behind, marveling at how wise she was without even knowing it. What would I do without you? Probably eat a lot more takeout, Diana said with a laugh. Over the next few weeks, Alexander quietly began selling assets to raise the money for the penalty. He sold 2 of his smaller companies, some real estate investments, and a collection of expensive cars. Diana noticed the cars disappearing from their garage. Are you having money problems? She asked one evening, her voice concerned. You've been selling things. Alexander had prepared for this question. Just restructuring some investments. Making room for new opportunities. If we need to move to a smaller house, I wouldn't mind. This place is too big for us anyway. Alexander pulled her close. We're not moving anywhere. This is your home now too. But Diana's comment made him think. The mansion was too big for them. It was a monument to his old life, when he thought expensive things would make him happy. What Diana had brought to their home wasn't expensive, it was warm and real and full of love. One evening, Diana surprised him with an announcement. I've been thinking about the bakery. I want to make it more than just a business. What do you mean? I want to create a community space. Somewhere families can come together, where people can take baking classes, where kids can learn about cooking. I want it to be a place that brings people together. Alexander listened as Diana described her vision, a bakery that would also serve as a community center, offering cooking classes for children, family baking nights, and support for local food banks. It was ambitious and beautiful and completely typical of Diana to think about how her success could help others. It would cost more to start, Diana continued. I'd need a bigger space, more equipment, money for programs. It might take me years longer to save enough. What if you didn't have to save for it? Alexander asked carefully. What do you mean? What if I invested in your bakery? As a business partner, not just as your husband. Diana was quiet for a long moment. Why would you want to do that? Because I believe in your vision. Because I think you could change people's lives with this idea. And because I want to be part of something that matters. Diana's eyes filled with tears. You really think my idea is good? I think it's brilliant. I think you're brilliant. They spent the next hour talking about Diana's plans in detail. Alexander was amazed by how thoroughly she had thought everything through, the business model, the community programs, even potential partnerships with local schools and charities. This wasn't just a dream, it was a carefully planned business venture that could make a real difference in their community. There's one problem though, Diana said finally. What's that? I don't want people to think I only succeeded because I married rich. I need to do this in a way that proves it's my accomplishment, not yours. Alexander understood. Diana's independence and integrity were part of what made her special. She needed to know that her success was earned, not given. What if we structured it as a real business partnership? You put in your savings and sweat equity, I put in additional capital. We split ownership based on contribution and you run everything. Your name on the business, your vision, your rules. Diana considered this. And you wouldn't interfere with how I run things? I might offer suggestions, but final decisions would be yours. It would be your bakery, Diana. I'd just be the silent partner who believes in you. 2 weeks later, they found the perfect space, a corner building in a diverse neighborhood with large windows, high ceilings, and room for both a bakery and community space. Diana fell in love with it immediately. This is it, she said, walking through the empty space with her hands outstretched. I can see everything, the ovens here, tables for families there, a corner for kids' classes. This is perfect. Alexander watched her transform the empty space with her imagination and felt something he had never experienced before, pride in someone else's dreams. He wanted Diana's bakery to succeed almost more than he had ever wanted anything for himself. The paperwork for the bakery kept Diana busy and excited for weeks. She worked with architects, equipment suppliers, and contractors, making decisions about everything from floor tiles to oven brands. Alexander helped when she asked but mostly stayed out of her way, content to watch her bring her vision to life. During this time, Alexander finalized the payment to his former friends. $60 million transferred out of his accounts without Diana noticing, partly because she rarely paid attention to their finances and partly because even without that money, they were still extremely wealthy. James called him once after receiving the payment. You're making a mistake, Alex. This whole thing is going to blow up in your face eventually. Maybe, Alexander said. But at least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror. 8 months into their marriage, Diana's bakery was ready to open. They had decided to call it Diana's Kitchen, a tribute to both her grandmother's cooking and the diner where they had met. The grand opening was planned for the following Saturday, and Diana was nervous and excited. What if nobody comes? She worried the night before. They'll come, Alexander assured her. And once they taste your food, they'll never stop coming. Alexander had secretly arranged for the grand opening to be covered by the food section of the local newspaper, not as a society story about his wife, but as a legitimate business feature about a new community-focused bakery. He wanted Diana to get the recognition she deserved as a businesswoman, not just as his wife. The morning of the grand opening, Alexander woke up early to find Diana already in the kitchen, dressed and ready but looking terrified. "I can't do this," she said when she saw him. "What if I fail? What if the food isn't good enough? What if people only come because they're curious about us?" Alexander took her hands. "Diana, you are one of the most talented, hardworking, caring people I know. Your food is incredible, your vision is beautiful, and your heart is pure. People are going to love what you've created. But what if dash? No what if. Today is about celebrating everything you've accomplished. You've worked for this, planned for this, and earned this. Whatever happens, I'm proud of you." Diana kissed him softly. "I love you, Alex. Thank you for believing in me." As they drove to the bakery together, Alexander realized that somewhere along the way, supporting Diana's dreams had become more important to him than any of his own ambitions. Her success felt like his success, her happiness was his happiness. The man who had married her as a bet no longer existed. In his place was someone who would do anything to protect and support the woman who had saved his soul without even knowing it was lost. But Alexander also knew that his past wasn't finished with them yet. The truth about how their marriage started was still out there, still dangerous. And as Diana's success grew, so did the chances that someone would discover what he had done. For now, though, he pushed those worries aside. Today was Diana's day, and nothing was going to ruin it for her. The grand opening of Diana's kitchen exceeded everyone's expectations. By noon, there was a line around the block of people waiting to try Diana's Southern Comfort desserts and witness the community space she had created. Local families brought their children, elderly couples shared slices of her famous peach cobbler, and teenagers hung out in the cozy seating area she had designed. "Mrs. Stone, this peach cobbler tastes just like my grandmother's," an elderly woman told Diana, tears in her eyes. "I haven't had anything this good since she passed away 20 years ago." Diana's face glowed with happiness. "That's the highest compliment you could give me. Thank you." Alexander watched from behind the counter, officially just helping but really just wanting to witness Diana's triumph. She was in her element, talking to customers about the recipes, explaining her vision for the community programs, and making everyone feel welcome and loved. The food critic from the local newspaper was there, and Alexander held his breath as the woman tasted Diana's signature brown butter pound cake. Her expression was unreadable at first, then she smiled and took another bite. "This is exceptional," she told Diana. "Where did you train?" "I didn't. I learned from my grandmother and years of practice. This is Southern baking the way it's supposed to be, made with love and meant to bring people together." The critic scribbled notes and asked more questions about Diana's background and plans for the bakery. Alexander was relieved that she seemed genuinely interested in Diana as a businesswoman, not just as his wife. By the end of the day, Diana's kitchen had sold out of almost everything. Diana was exhausted but radiating joy as she locked up the empty bakery. "I can't believe how many people came," she said as they drove home. "And they seem to really understand what I was trying to create." "Because you're offering them something real," Alexander said. "Something that comes from your heart." The critic seemed nice. She said she'd never tasted brown butter pound cake that good outside of the Deep South. Alexander squeezed Diana's hand. "I'm so proud of you. Today was perfect." The newspaper review came out 3 days later, and it was better than Alexander could have hoped for. The critic praised Diana's authentic Southern flavors and innovative community-focused business model. She called Diana's kitchen a sweet addition to our city's food scene, and gave it 4 out of 5 stars. "She barely mentioned that I'm married to you," Diana said, reading the review for the 3rd time. "She focused on the food and the business idea." As she should have. "This is your accomplishment, Diana. You earned this review." Diana's kitchen quickly became popular beyond their neighborhood. Food bloggers discovered it, families made it a regular weekend destination, and Diana's community programs attracted attention from local schools and charities. Within a month, Diana had hired 2 employees and was considering expanding her hours. "I want to add Saturday morning baking classes for kids," she told Alexander one evening as they reviewed the bakery's financial reports. And maybe family baking nights on Fridays. Sounds perfect. Do you need more space? Not yet, but maybe eventually. I'm thinking about the future. Alexander loved hearing Diana talk about the future. For so long he had been dreading it, knowing that their marriage was supposed to end after 1 year. Now, listening to her make long-term plans that included both of them, he felt hopeful and terrified at the same time. 9 months into their marriage, Alexander thought he had successfully buried his past. The bet was paid off, his former friends were out of his life, and Diana was thriving. He had started to believe that maybe they could have a normal marriage from now on. Then Diana came home from the bakery one afternoon with a strange expression on her face. "Alex, do you know a man named James Morrison?" Alexander's blood turned to ice. "Why do you ask?" "He came into the bakery today. He said he was an old friend of yours and wanted to meet me. He seemed nice, but something about him felt off." Alexander's mind raced. Why would James come to the bakery? What did he want? What did he say to you? Just small talk mostly. He asked how long we'd been married, how we met, that sort of thing. But he kept asking about our early relationship, like he was fishing for something specific. Alexander tried to keep his voice calm. "What did you tell him?" "The truth. That you used to come to Betty's kitchen every day and we fell in love." But Alex, he seemed surprised by that story. Like he expected me to say something different. Alexander felt panic rising in his chest. James was up to something, but what? The bet was over, the money was paid. What more could he want? Did he say anything else? "He mentioned that you guys had some kind of business disagreement recently. He seemed sad about it, like he missed being friends with you." Alexander wanted to tell Diana that James had never been a real friend, that their business disagreement was about a cruel bet that treated her like an object. But he couldn't say any of that without explaining everything. "Some friendships run their course," he said finally. "If he comes back, just tell him I'm not interested in reconnecting." Diana studied his face. "Alex, is there something you're not telling me? You look upset." "I'm just tired. It's been a long day." But Diana wasn't fooled. Over the next few days she watched Alexander carefully. He was distracted and jumpy, checking his phone constantly and looking worried about everything. When she asked what was wrong, he gave vague answers about work stress. The truth was, Alexander was terrified. He didn't know what James was planning, but he knew it couldn't be good. James was the type of person who held grudges, and losing $60 million to Alexander's conscience was definitely grudge-worthy. A week later, Diana came home with more disturbing news. "That friend of yours came back to the bakery today." "James. What did he want this time?" "He asked more questions about how we met. Specific questions like what date you first came to Betty's kitchen, whether you seemed interested in me right away, stuff like that." "Alex, it felt like he was interviewing me for something." Alexander knew he had to do something before James revealed the truth in the worst possible way. But what could he do? If he confronted James, it might make things worse. If he told Diana the truth himself, it would destroy everything they had built together. "Diana, I need you to promise me something. If James comes back, don't talk to him. Just tell him to leave." "What? What's going on?" "I can't explain right now, but please trust me. James is not a good person, and I don't want him around you." Diana looked hurt by his evasiveness. "Alex, we're married. You can tell me anything. What aren't you saying?" Alexander wanted desperately to tell her everything. The guilt of keeping the bet secret was eating him alive, especially now that James was sniffing around. But he was also terrified of losing her. "I will tell you," he said finally. "But not today. I need to handle something first. Can you trust me for just a little while longer?" Diana nodded reluctantly, but Alexander could see that his secretiveness was starting to damage her trust in him. She had always been direct and honest, and his evasions were confusing and hurtful to her. That night, Alexander made a decision. He couldn't wait for James to make his move. He had to tell Diana the truth himself before she heard it from someone else. She deserved to hear it from him, and she deserved the chance to decide whether their marriage was worth saving despite how it started. But first he needed to talk to James one more time. He needed to understand what his former friend was trying to accomplish and whether there was any way to protect Diana from the worst of it. The next morning, Alexander called James and arranged to meet him for lunch. It was time to face his past and figure out how to save his future. "I wondered when you'd call," James said when they sat down at the restaurant. "Diana is lovely, by the way. Very sweet, very trusting." "Stay away from my wife," Alexander said coldly. "Or what? You'll pay me more money?" James smiled, and Alexander realized that this had never been about money at all. This was about power and control and James's anger at being rejected. What do you want? I want you to remember who you really are, Alex. You're not some reformed man who found true love. You're the guy who married a fat waitress for $50 million. You're one of us, whether you want to admit it or not. Alexander stood up to leave, but James's next words stopped him cold. Sit down, Alex. Or I'll tell Diana everything tomorrow. And I mean everything, the bet, the contract, the fact that you investigated her before you ever walked into that diner. How do you think she'll feel knowing that your love story was actually a business transaction? Alexander sat back down, his heart pounding. What do you want? I want you to come back to our poker games. I want you to admit that this whole marriage was a mistake. And I want you to start acting like the man you used to be. And if I don't? Then Diana learns the truth. And we both know that will be the end of your little fairy tale. Alexander stared at James across the table and realized that his past wasn't just catching up with him, it was about to destroy everything he cared about. He had one choice left: tell Diana the truth himself and hope that their love was strong enough to survive it. Because one way or another, the truth was coming out. And Alexander would rather break Diana's heart himself than let James do it for him. That evening, Alexander sat in his office staring at the safe where he had once kept the bet contract. Diana was downstairs watching television, probably wondering why he had been so quiet during dinner. He knew that tomorrow he would have to tell her everything and possibly lose her forever. The cruel irony wasn't lost on him. He had fallen genuinely in love with the woman he had married as a joke, and now that love was about to be destroyed by the very lie that had created it. Alexander spent the night writing and rewriting a letter, trying to find words that could explain the unexplainable. How do you tell someone that your entire relationship started as a bet? How do you ask for forgiveness for a betrayal that deep? The next morning, Diana left for the bakery early to prepare for a large catering order. Alexander was supposed to meet her there later to help with a children's baking class, but first he had something else to do. He called James. I want to make a deal. I'm listening. Give me 1 week to tell Diana myself. Let me handle this my way and I'll give you what you want. I'll admit the marriage was a mistake, I'll come to your poker games, whatever. Just let me be the one to tell her. James was quiet for a moment. 1 week, Alex. But if you try to spin this or make yourself look like a victim, I'll tell her the whole truth anyway. Alexander hung up and drove to Diana's kitchen. When he walked in, he found Diana in her element, teaching a group of 8-year-olds how to measure flour and crack eggs. Her face was bright with joy as she helped a little girl whose cookies were coming out lopsided. They're perfect, Diana told the child. Cookies made with love always taste the best, even if they're not perfectly round. Alexander watched from the doorway, his heart breaking. This was who Diana really was, someone who made everyone around her feel special and loved. Someone who saw beauty and potential where others saw flaws. Someone who deserved so much better than what he had given her. After the class ended and the children left with their parents, Diana found Alexander sitting quietly in the corner. You've been strange lately, she said, sitting down next to him. Talk to me, Alex. What's wrong? Alexander looked into her trusting brown eyes and felt like the worst person alive. Diana, I need to tell you something. Something important. Okay. Diana's voice was gentle but concerned. Not here. At home tonight after dinner. We need to have a serious conversation about us. Diana's face went pale. Are you unhappy with our marriage? No, Alexander said quickly. I'm not unhappy. I love you more than I've ever loved anyone. But there are things about how we met that I haven't told you. Things you need to know. What kinds of things? I'll explain everything tonight. I promise. Diana nodded, but Alexander could see worry in her eyes for the rest of the day. She was quieter than usual, and several times he caught her looking at him with questions she didn't ask. That evening they had dinner at home. Diana had made his favorite meal, but Alexander could barely taste it. His stomach was twisted with nerves and guilt. Are you ready to tell me what's going on? Diana asked as they cleared the dishes. Alexander's hands shook as he led her to the living room. They sat on the couch where they had spent so many happy evenings together, and Alexander tried to find the courage to destroy it all. Diana, what I'm about to tell you is going to hurt you. It's going to make you angry and probably make you hate me. But I need you to know that everything I feel for you now is real. Diana's face was tense with worry. Just tell me, Alex. Alexander took a deep breath. Our marriage didn't happen the way I told you it did. I didn't come to Betty's kitchen by accident. I was there looking for someone specific. What do you mean? I was looking for someone to marry. Someone who would fulfill certain requirements. Diana frowned. Requirements for what? Alexander felt like he was about to jump off a cliff. For a bet. Diana, I married you because of a bet I made with my friends. The color drained from Diana's face. What? My friends and I made a bet about who could marry the most unlikely woman and stay married for 1 year. The winner would get $50 million. Diana stared at him in silence for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. You married me for money? It started that way. But Diana, I fell in love with you. Real love. Everything between us became real. Diana stood up abruptly, backing away from him. You picked me because I was fat and poor and black. Because I was unlikely. Diana, please let me explain. Oh my God. Diana's hand went to her mouth. All those questions about how we met, about why you chose me. I asked you over and over, and you lied to me every time. Alexander stood up too, reaching for her, but she stepped back. Diana, please. Yes, it started as a bet, but I fell in love with you. I called off the bet months ago. I paid the penalty to get out of it. How much? Diana's voice was cold now. What? How much did it cost you to get out of the bet? Alexander hesitated. $60 million. Diana laughed, but it was a bitter sound. $60 million. So your love for me cost you $60 million. It wasn't about the money. It was always about money. Diana shouted, tears streaming down her face. You bet money on marrying me, you paid money to keep me, everything about us has been about money. That's not true. Diana, I love you. The bet was wrong, but my feelings for you are real. How can I believe anything you say? Our entire relationship is built on lies. You researched me like I was a business deal. You planned our first meeting. You manipulated everything. Alexander felt desperate. Yes, I lied about how we met. But everything else was real. The way I feel about you, the way we are together, our marriage, that's all real. Diana wiped her eyes and looked at him with an expression he had never seen before. Cold and distant. Get out. Diana, please. Get out of this house. I need time to think, and I can't do that with you here. This is my house too. We can work this out. No, it's your house. It was always your house. I was just the entertainment you paid $60 million for. Alexander felt like his heart was being ripped out. Diana, you know that's not true. You know how much you mean to me. I don't know anything anymore. Everything I thought I knew was a lie. Diana walked toward the door, then turned back. I'll stay at my mother's nursing home tonight. Don't follow me. Don't call me. I need time to figure out if there's anything left of us that's worth saving. After Diana left, Alexander sat alone in their house and realized what he had lost. Not just a wife, but the person who had made him want to be better. The person who had loved him for who he was, not what he had. The person who had taught him what real happiness felt like. He had paid $60 million to keep Diana, but in the end, the cost of losing her was going to be much higher than that. It was going to cost him everything that mattered. Alexander spent the night walking through their house, seeing Diana's touches everywhere. Her plants in the windows, her photos on the mantel, her favorite coffee mug in the kitchen. The house felt empty and cold without her warmth filling it. He had 1 week before James would make things even worse. 1 week to figure out if there was any way to win back the woman he loved. 1 week to prove that their marriage was worth more than the bet that had started it. But first, he had to figure out how to forgive himself. Because if he couldn't do that, how could he ever ask Diana to forgive him? Diana spent 3 days at the nursing home, sleeping in a chair next to her mother's bed and trying to make sense of her shattered world. Mrs. Johnson, despite her failing health, was still sharp enough to notice her daughter's pain. "Baby girl, you look like your heart is broken," she said on the second day. Diana had told her mother everything, about the bet, the lies, the money, all of it. Mrs. Johnson had listened without judgment, just holding Diana's hand while she cried. "The question isn't whether he lied to you," Mrs. Johnson said gently. "The question is whether he loves you now. And whether you love him." "How can I love someone who married me as a joke?" Diana asked. "The same way he can love someone he married for the wrong reasons. Love isn't about how it starts, honey. It's about what you build together. But our whole relationship is based on lies." "Is it? Or is it based on the 9 months you've spent learning to love each other?" "Diana, that man changed everything about his life for you. He cut off his friends, he stood up to his family, he supported your dreams. That's not the behavior of someone playing a game." Diana knew her mother was right, but the hurt was too deep and fresh. "How can I ever trust him again?" "That's something only you can decide. But think about this, he could have kept the secret forever. You never would have known if he hadn't chosen to tell you. That has to count for something." On the 4th day, Diana drove to her bakery. She needed to work, needed to do something normal while her world felt upside down. But when she arrived, she found a surprise waiting for her. Alexander was there, but he wasn't alone. A woman Diana had never seen before was with him, tall, blonde, and clearly wealthy based on her clothes and jewelry. They were standing close together, looking at the menu board, and the woman was laughing at something Alexander had said. Diana's heart clenched. Was this what Alexander's real type looked like? Was this who he would be with if he hadn't made that stupid bet? Diana considered leaving, but this was her bakery. Her dream. She wouldn't let Alexander take that away from her too. She walked in through the back entrance and started her prep work, trying to ignore the voices from the front of the store. But then she heard Alexander call her name. Diana? Could you come out here for a minute? Diana steeled herself and walked to the front counter. Alexander looked terrible, like he hadn't slept in days. The blonde woman was studying Diana with curious eyes. Diana, this is my sister Emma, Alexander said. Emma, this is my wife Diana. Diana felt foolish for her jealousy but didn't let it show. Nice to meet you. Emma smiled warmly. I've been wanting to meet you for months, but my stubborn brother kept making excuses. This place is amazing, by the way. Could I try the brown butter pound cake? Alex has been telling me about it. As Diana cut a slice of cake, she listened to Emma chatter about how proud Alexander was of the bakery, how he had been bragging about Diana's business skills to anyone who would listen. He showed me the newspaper review, Emma said. Framed it and put it on his office wall. I've never seen him so excited about someone else's success. Diana glanced at Alexander, who was looking embarrassed. He framed the review? Right next to his Harvard diploma, Emma said with a laugh. I think he's prouder of your bakery than his own company's. After Emma left, Diana and Alexander stood alone in the bakery. The awkwardness between them was painful. I didn't know you framed the review, Diana said quietly. I framed a lot of things. Pictures of you at the grand opening, the business license with your name on it, even that first recipe you wrote down for me. Alexander's voice was soft. I know you don't believe me, but I am proud of you. I'm proud to be your husband even if I don't deserve to be. Diana felt tears threatening again. Alex, I don't know what to do. I'm so angry and hurt, but I also miss you. I miss us. I miss us too. More than I knew was possible. But how do we get past this? How do I trust you again? Alexander was quiet for a moment. I don't know if you can. But Diana, I want you to know something. Even if you decide to divorce me, even if you never forgive me, supporting your dreams has been the best thing I've ever done with my life. You made me a better person. You made me believe in myself, Diana said, tears flowing now. You made me think I was worth something. You are worth everything. You're worth more than I ever deserved. They stood there crying together but not touching. The distance between them felt like an ocean. That evening, Diana went back to the nursing home, but she couldn't stop thinking about what Emma had said. Alexander had framed her achievements and put them in his office. He had bragged about her to his sister. Those weren't the actions of someone who was ashamed of his wife. The next day, Diana made a decision. She called Alexander and asked him to meet her at the park where they used to walk together. I've been thinking, she said when they sat down on their favorite bench, about what you said about calling off the bet. Diana dash. Let me finish. You said you paid $60 million to get out of the bet. That you chose me over the money. Alexander nodded. I did. When? When did you make that choice? Alexander thought about it. About 6 months ago. When you were getting those threatening letters and I realized how much you meant to me. I couldn't go through with hurting you. So for the last 3 months, you've been staying married to me because you wanted to, not because of any bet. Yes. Diana, I love you. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I love you. Diana was quiet for a long time, watching children play on the playground. I love you too, she said finally. That's what makes this so hard. I love you, but I don't know if I can trust you. What can I do? Tell me what I can do to earn your trust back. Diana turned to face him. I need complete honesty from now on. No more secrets, no more lies, even little ones. And I need time. I can't just pretend this didn't happen. How much time? I don't know. Maybe we should try marriage counseling. Maybe we need to start over in some ways. Alexander felt a spark of hope for the first time in days. You're willing to try? I'm willing to try. But Alex, if you ever lie to me again about anything, we're done. No second chances. I understand. Diana, I will spend the rest of my life making this up to you. Don't make promises you can't keep. Just be honest with me. That's all I want. They sat together on the bench, not touching but closer than they had been since the truth came out. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was a beginning. "There's something else," Alexander said. "James has been threatening to tell you the truth himself. He wants me to come back to their group, to pretend our marriage was a mistake." "What did you tell him?" "I told him I'd rather lose everything than go back to being the person I was before I met you." Diana looked at him with something that might have been the beginning of forgiveness. "Good. Because that person wasn't someone I could love." 2 weeks later, Diana moved back into their house, but things were different. She slept in the guest room and maintained careful distance from Alexander. They were polite to each other, like roommates who were trying to get along, but the easy intimacy they had shared was gone. Alexander respected Diana's boundaries, even though it hurt to be so close to her yet feel so far away. He had started seeing a therapist, trying to understand how he had become the kind of person who could make a bet about another human being. Diana had agreed to marriage counseling, but only after she felt ready. "I need to rebuild my sense of self first," she explained one morning over coffee. "I need to remember who I am when I'm not questioning everything about my life." Alexander understood, even though waiting was agony. He threw himself into work and into supporting Diana's bakery from a distance. When she mentioned needing new equipment, he quietly arranged for a supplier to offer her a discount. When she worried about cash flow, he made sure some of his business associates discovered her catering services. Diana noticed these small helps but didn't comment on them. She was focused on proving to herself that she could succeed on her own merit, regardless of how their relationship had started. One afternoon, Diana came home from the bakery with news that made Alexander's blood run cold. "James came by again today," she said without preamble. "What did he want?" "To tell me his version of the story. He seemed surprised that I already knew about the bet." Alexander felt panic rising. "What did he say?" "He told me that you had investigated me before you ever came to Betty's kitchen. That you knew about my mother's medical bills, my financial situation, even my work schedule. He said you planned everything." This was exactly what Alexander had feared. Diana dash. "Is it true?" Alexander closed his eyes. He had promised complete honesty. "Yes. I had someone look into your background before I approached you." Diana's face went pale. "You had me investigated? Like I was a criminal?" "Like you were a business deal," Alexander said quietly. "Which is what I thought you were at the time." Diana sat down heavily on the couch. "What else? What other lies are waiting for me to discover?" "Nothing. I swear to you, Diana, that was the last secret. I had you investigated, I made the bet, I pursued you for the wrong reasons. But everything that happened after I got to know you was real. How can I believe that when you researched me like a stock investment? You knew exactly what to say to me, exactly how to make me fall for you." Alexander sat down across from her, careful not to get too close. "Diana, look at me. If I had scripted our relationship, would I have made so many mistakes? Would I have been nervous around you? Would I have fallen in love with you? Maybe you're just a good actor." "I'm not. You know I'm not. You've seen me try to lie about little things, I'm terrible at it. Remember when I tried to surprise you with dinner reservations and you figured it out immediately?" Despite her pain, Diana almost smiled at the memory. "You kept checking your phone and couldn't stop fidgeting. Because I can't lie to you. Not about the things that matter. Diana, yes, I investigated you before we met. But everything I learned just told me surface facts. Where you worked, where you lived, your financial situation. It didn't tell me that you hum when you're happy, or that you give the best hugs in the world, or that you make everyone around you feel special. It didn't tell me that you would change my entire life." Diana was quiet for a long time. "James also told me that your friends think you're having some kind of breakdown. That they're planning an intervention to get you away from me." Alexander felt a chill. What kind of intervention? He wasn't specific. Just said they're worried about you and think you need help getting your life back on track. That evening, Alexander called his sister Emma. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Okay. Have any of my old friends contacted you? Asked you questions about me or Diana?" Emma was quiet for a moment. "Actually, yes. James called me last week. He said he was concerned about you, that you were isolating yourself from your friends and making bad business decisions." "What did you tell him?" "I told him you seemed happier than I'd seen you in years and to mind his own business." "Alex, what's going on?" Alexander explained about the bet, about James's threats, about everything. Emma listened in shocked silence. "Alex, how could you do something so cruel?" "I don't know. I was a different person then. Diana changed me. And now you might lose her because of it." "I might lose her anyway." She's trying to forgive me, but I don't know if she can get past this. What are you going to do about James? I don't know. He wants me to go back to being who I was before Diana. He wants me to admit our marriage was a mistake. Would you do that? To protect her? Alexander thought about it. If it would keep Diana safe and happy, yes. But I don't think that's what this is about. I think James wants to prove that people like me don't really change. That love isn't real for people like us. 2 days later, Alexander got a call that confirmed his worst fears. His assistant Sarah sounded nervous when she called. Mr. Stone, there are some men here to see you. They say they're your friends, but they seem insistent. Alexander knew who it was before he even asked. Tell them I'll be right down. When Alexander reached the lobby of his office building, he found James, Robert, and Michael waiting for him. They looked like they were conducting a business meeting, serious and determined. We need to talk, James said without preamble. I have nothing to say to any of you. Actually, you do. We've been watching you, Alex. You're destroying your life for this woman. Your business associates think you're having a breakdown. Your mother is worried sick. My mother sent those threatening letters to my wife. I don't care what she thinks. Robert stepped forward. Alex, we're staging an intervention. We think you need professional help to get over this obsession with Diana. Alexander laughed bitterly. An intervention? For falling in love with my wife. For losing your mind over a bet, Michael said. Alex, we've arranged for you to spend some time at a private facility. Just until you can think clearly again. Alexander realized with horror that they were serious. You want to have me committed? We want to help you, James said. Diana has some kind of hold over you and we need to break it before you lose everything. The only thing I'm afraid of losing is her. And that's because of what I did, not what she did. Alex, listen to yourself. You're defending a woman who trapped you into marriage. She didn't trap me into anything. I trapped her. I lied to her, I manipulated her, I made her fall in love with someone she thought I was. The three men exchanged glances. Okay, James said finally. We tried to do this the easy way. But if you won't come willingly, we'll have to force you. Alexander saw 2 security guards approaching from behind his friends. They were planning to physically take him somewhere against his will. This is kidnapping, Alexander said, backing toward the elevator. This is friendship, James replied. Someday you'll thank us. Alexander made it to the elevator just as the doors closed. As he rode up to his office, he realized that his old life wasn't just catching up with him, it was trying to destroy everything he had built with Diana. He had to warn her. Because if James and his friends were willing to have him committed to break up his marriage, there was no telling what they might do to Diana herself. Alexander grabbed his phone and called Diana at the bakery. Diana, you need to close up and go somewhere safe. Now. What? Alex, what's wrong? My friends just tried to have me committed. They think you've brainwashed me or something. I don't know what they'll do next, but I need you to be safe. Where should I go? Your mother's place. I'll meet you there as soon as I can get out of the building without them seeing me. Alexander hung up and looked out his office window. James and his friends were still in the lobby waiting for him. They thought they could force him back into his old life, back into being the kind of person who would treat another human being as a bet. But they were wrong. Alexander would rather lose his fortune, his freedom, even his life than go back to being who he was before Diana taught him how to love. The question was, would Diana believe that? And would she still want to fight for their marriage when she saw how dangerous his past really was? Alexander waited in his office until after dark, then used the building's service elevator to escape without being seen by James and his friends. He drove to the nursing home where Diana was waiting with her mother, and when he saw her safe face, he felt relief wash over him. Are you okay? Diana asked, standing up from her chair beside her mother's bed. I'm fine. But Diana, we need to talk about what happens next. These men aren't going to just give up. Mrs. Johnson spoke up from her bed. Alexander, come sit down. Diana told me what happened today. Alexander sat down nervously. Diana's mother had always been kind to him, but he wasn't sure how she felt about him now that she knew the truth about their marriage. I want to tell you a story, Mrs. Johnson said. About Diana's father. Diana looked surprised. Mama, you never talk about him. Because it's painful. But maybe it's time. Mrs. Johnson looked at Alexander. Diana's father was a charming man who swept me off my feet. Promised me the world, made me feel like a queen. But it was all lies. He was married to someone else, had children with other women. When I found out, Diana was already on the way. Alexander felt sick, wondering if Mrs. Johnson was comparing him to Diana's father. But here's the difference. Mrs. Johnson continued. That man never felt guilty about his lies. Never tried to make things right. Never loved anyone more than himself. You, Alexander, you told Diana the truth even though it might destroy your marriage. You paid $60 million to get out of a bet that was wrong. You changed your whole life to become worthy of my daughter. Mama, Diana said softly. I'm not saying Diana should forgive you, Mrs. Johnson said firmly. That's her choice to make. But I am saying that a man who gives up everything to protect the woman he loves is not the same man who made that bet in the first place. Alexander felt tears in his eyes. Mrs. Johnson, I know I don't deserve Diana's forgiveness. But I want you to know that loving her saved my life. Before her, I was empty inside. She taught me what really matters. I can see that, Mrs. Johnson said gently. The question is, what are you going to do now? Those men aren't going to leave you alone. Alexander looked at Diana, who had been quiet during her mother's speech. That depends on Diana. If she wants to end our marriage, I'll understand. I'll make sure she's safe and taken care of, and I'll deal with James and his friends on my own. And if I want to fight for our marriage? Diana asked quietly. Alexander's heart leaped. Then we fight together. But Diana, it's going to be difficult. These men have money and connections. They might try to hurt your bakery, your reputation, anything they can use to get to me. Diana stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the parking lot. Alex, can I ask you something honestly? Anything. If you had to choose between your old life, the money, the status, the friends, all of it, and me, what would you choose? Alexander didn't hesitate. You. I would choose you every time. Even if it meant losing everything else? Diana, I already lost everything else when I hurt you. Nothing matters except earning your trust back. Diana turned around and looked at him with tears in her eyes. I've been so angry and hurt that I forgot something important. When you told me the truth about the bet, you didn't have to. You could have kept that secret forever and I never would have known. But I would have known. And I couldn't live with that lie anymore. That's what I forgot. You chose honesty over keeping me. You chose my right to know the truth over your own happiness. That has to count for something. Alexander stood up slowly. What are you saying? I'm saying that I want to fight for us. I'm saying that maybe our marriage didn't start the right way, but we can build something real from here. Together. Alexander felt like he could breathe again for the first time in weeks. Are you sure? I'm sure that I love you. I'm sure that you're not the same man who made that bet. And I'm sure that if we're going to face whatever comes next, we should do it as a team. Diana walked over to Alexander and took his hands. But I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me that no matter what your friends do, no matter what threats they make, you won't go back to being who you were before. Don't let them win by turning you back into someone I can't love. Alexander pulled Diana into his arms, holding her close for the first time since the truth came out. I promise. Diana, I love you. Not because of any bet, not because of any other reason except that you're the best person I've ever known. I love you too. And Alex? We're going to be okay. The next morning, Alexander and Diana met with lawyers to discuss their options regarding James and his friends. The attempted intervention was illegal, but proving it would be difficult. The lawyers suggested documenting everything and staying alert for future threats. There is one option, the lawyer said carefully. If you were willing to go public with your story, it might protect you. These men operate in shadows, but they can't hurt you if everyone is watching. Alexander and Diana looked at each other. Going public would mean admitting to the world that their marriage had started as a bet. It would be humiliating and painful. Would it work? Diana asked. Probably. Men like this don't want their reputations damaged. If the story comes out on your terms, with your truth, they lose their power over you. That evening, Alexander and Diana sat in their living room, planning what to do next. Are you really ready for the whole world to know about the bet? Alexander asked. Are you? Diana countered. If it keeps you safe and ends this mess, yes. I'm tired of living with secrets. Diana smiled. Then let's tell our story. The real story, not the version James wants people to hear. They decided to give an exclusive interview to a respected journalist who specialized in stories about redemption and second chances. Alexander would admit to the bet, explain why he made it, and describe how Diana had changed his life. Diana would talk about forgiveness, growth, and choosing love over revenge. People might judge us, Diana said as they prepared for the interview. Let them. The people who matter will understand. The interview was scheduled for the following week. In the meantime, Alexander took additional steps to protect Diana. He hired security for the bakery, increased the insurance policies on all their properties, and made sure Diana was never alone in public. 3 days before the interview, James called Alexander one last time. "Last chance, Alex. Come back to us willingly or we'll destroy everything you care about." "Go ahead and try," Alexander said calmly. "But James, you should know something. Diana and I are telling our story publicly. Everything, the bet, the threats, all of it. Your reputation is about to become as public as mine." There was silence on the other end of the phone. "You wouldn't dare," James said finally. "Watch me. I'm done being ashamed of loving my wife. And I'm done letting you and your friends control my life." Alexander hung up and turned to Diana, who had been listening to the conversation. "No regrets?" she asked. "Only one," Alexander said, pulling her close. "I regret that it took me so long to realize that you're worth more than all their money and approval combined." The interview aired on a Sunday evening, exactly 1 year after Alexander had first walked into Betty's kitchen. They watched it together, holding hands on their couch as they told the world their story. Alexander admitted to the bet and apologized publicly for his past behavior. Diana talked about forgiveness and second chances. Together, they described how real love had grown from the worst possible beginning. The response was overwhelming. Some people criticized them, but many more were moved by their honesty and growth. Diana's bakery saw an increase in business from people who wanted to support her courage. Alexander's business associates respected his honesty and integrity. Most importantly, James and his friends disappeared from their lives completely. The public attention made it impossible for them to continue their threats without destroying their own reputations. 6 months later, Alexander and Diana renewed their wedding vows in a small ceremony at Diana's kitchen. This time, their marriage was based on complete honesty, mutual respect, and genuine love. "1 year ago, I made the worst bet of my life," Alexander said in his vows. "But that bet led me to the best thing in my life, you. Diana, you saved me from myself, and I will spend every day proving that I'm worthy of your love." "Alex," Diana said through tears, "you taught me that people can change, that love can grow from the most unlikely places, and that forgiveness is the most powerful force in the world. I choose you not because of how we started, but because of who we became together." As they kissed to seal their renewed commitment, Alexander realized that the bet that had once threatened to destroy them had ultimately made their love stronger. They had faced the worst possible truth about their beginning and chosen to build something beautiful from it. Diana's kitchen thrived, becoming not just a bakery but a symbol of second chances and community. Alexander found more satisfaction in supporting Diana's dreams than he ever had in his own business successes. And late at night, when they lay in bed together, Alexander would sometimes think about the contract he had signed 2 years earlier. $50 million to marry an unlikely woman and divorce her after 1 year. He had gotten the marriage part right, but everything else had been wrong. Diana wasn't unlikely, she was inevitable, the missing piece of his soul he hadn't known he was looking for. And divorce was impossible when you had found the person who made you want to be better every single day. The bet had been about money, but their love story was about something much more valuable: the power of 2 people to save each other and build a life worth living. In the end, Alexander had won the biggest jackpot of all, a love that was real, honest, and strong enough to survive anything. And the best part was, he got to share it with the most amazing woman he had ever known. Their story became proof that sometimes the worst decisions can lead to the best outcomes, and that love really can conquer all, even the lies that threaten to destroy it. Diana and Alexander Stone lived happily ever after, not because their story was perfect, but because they chose to make it perfect together.